Well, 7 justices of the United States Supreme Court in a new decision believe that making your own gun at home should not allow you to avoid a background check or having the gun registered. You shouldn't be able to create a DIY ghost gun with a kit that you buy from an arms dealer or an arms manufacturer and just use it as a hobby at home. Because the reality, as reflected in Gorsuch's opinion, is that the data shows that up to 30,000 ghost guns a year end up involved with violent crime. That's a bad thing. Not to Alito and Thomas. They're okay with it. I'm going to cover it all here. The case is called Vanderstock. It just came out with the United States Supreme Court, and I'm Michael Popok here on Legal AF. We talked a lot about these quote-unquote ghost guns. Ghost guns take many forms and with many different kits. You can buy them. Apparently, you can 3D print some of your own parts. You get the receiver, you get the handle, you get the magazine, and then you got to put it together. And if you really are just interested as a hobbyist in putting a gun together, it can come in 100 parts. And you can build each one like you're doing a jigsaw puzzle. If you really just want a gun that's not registered, they'll send it to you and it looks exactly like a gun, except it needs like an extra screw put in, or it needs like a couple of plastic tabs pulled out, and then you've got a firearm. See, that's the phoniness about these kits. These are not about hobbyists. These are not about people trying to make, muskets from the 1800s. These are people that are trying to create guns that are not regulated. And if they didn't end up in such large proportions in the hands of bad people, I guess I might feel different about it. At least that's what Gorsuch says in his majority opinion, joined by everybody except for Alito and Thomas. So the 3 Democratic wing of the United States Supreme Court joined together with 4 more conservative or right-wing members, and they formed this opinion. Now, Gorsuch does a good job in the Vanderstock case, which was a Biden era. Remember the Biden era? Oh, I'm so nostalgic for it. It was a Biden era regulation from its Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives Bureau, which interpreted the Gun Control Act of 1968, a very tumultuous, violent time in our American history. 1968, put a pin in that, I'll come back to it. They said that the law about registering and having eventually background checks applies to these kits. The kit manufacturers, gun manufacturers, and enthusiasts, and people who are all about the Second Amendment against all other rights, they jumped up and down and said, no, we made them at home. It's not a weapon. It's not. And then Gorsuch said, but if you look at the act itself, it applies. And many of these are advertised as buy, build, and shoot. I mean, it's right there in the name of the kit. Buy, build, and shoot. When he goes through the regulation, they say, look, the frame or receiver and all of that, this is all covered. This statute applied even to starter pistols or anything that could be converted into a firearm to fire a projectile. It's not exactly what a kit is. It's something that can be converted on the fly within, as Gorsuch said, sometimes within 30 minutes to fire a projectile. And there's a phoniness about it. He put up some photos, which I'll show you in a minute in the opinion, of how close these guns look coming out of the box as a kit. If you're picturing a jigsaw puzzle, forget it. It looks exactly like a gun, or it's the 3 major pieces: frame, receiver, and magazine. Point and shoot. Buy, point, and shoot. And what the Gorsuch reminded us is the history behind the Gun Control Act of 1968. It's in the wake of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and RFK. RFK Jr. should know all about that. It was his father. And guns ending up on the streets that were unregistered in the hands of bad people. Now, Gorsuch said, look at the technology. It used to be you'd need like a whole milling, you'd have to be an iron worker to like properly, and a fabricator to properly put together a weapon that could fire. Now with polymers, 3D printers, and these kits, anybody can do it. It's like, you're buying something from Wayfair or IKEA. It's like screwing on the legs. There's the chair. It's as easy as that. And that's what troubled Gorsuch. So what they ended up ruling is that the Gun Control Act can be applied and mapped onto forcing the regulation, depending upon the type of kit, these ghost gun kits, requiring background checks and registration for whatever you produce. So the kit will now have to come with a registration number that's registered with the federal database. And the person that builds the gun, once it's built, I guess, will have to undergo a background check. So yes, this is why the manufacturers hated it, got in the way of their commercial enterprise. They just want you to buy, build, and shoot, and nothing else. The problem is, who's on the other end of the receiver? Who's on the other end of the shoot part? That's the problem. And that's the problem that Gorsuch noted. Another interesting aspect, I'll read you from a couple of pages here. Another interesting aspect of this is a rejection of Texas, or what I call the Texas two-step, which was used successfully by MAGA to go find one single judge in one single district, the thing they're complaining about now, like Judge Kaczmarek or somebody else in the Northern District of Texas, get a ruling, a nationwide injunction or ruling, take it to the Fifth Circuit, that's the two-step, which is a hard right-leaning conservative MAGA appellate court, and then from there to the United States Supreme Court. I mean, as I talk about it Unprecedented, our show on Legal AF, more cases on appeal come up to the United States Supreme Court from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals than any other one. And it's not because they're doing everything right, if you know what I mean. They get affirmed. I'm not saying they always get rejected, but here, the trial judge in Texas that MAGA had hand selected, he said, no, you can't regulate ghost guns. No, it's not covered by the Gun Control Act of 1968 or its amendments. No. This is not something the founding fathers would have stopped 3D printing and ghost guns. And then the Fifth Circuit agreed. And Gorsuch was like, you're both reversed. No. And then a couple of the other judges wrote their own concurrences here. Alito, but everybody joined together in the Gorsuch opinion, which is now the law of the land, which says that you can have coexisting at the same time, the Gun Control Act of 1968 and regulations as interpreted by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, that they apply, these regulations apply, depending upon the kit. I mean, Gorsuch offered that if it's a very complicated kit with 1,000 parts and not close to being out of the box ready to shoot, he would maybe feel differently. But they can coexist. And so that is the ruling. Now, Alito and Thomas jump up and down, no surprise. Thomas is the one that wrote the Braun versus New York Rifle a couple of years ago, and that the majority joined in, and that expanded the Second Amendment rights of people to carry firearms and not have any real regulation against them unless it had existed in old-timey times in the 1800s. And if it didn't exist, if there wasn't a historical precedent or analog back in old-timey times, then you weren't going to be able to regulate it now. And the declaration by the Supreme Court that this was a personal constitutional right of the people under the Second Amendment, grossly distorting the language of the Second Amendment, much to the celebration of the National Rifle Association and other sport rifle associations who all had basically bought and paid for Kavanaugh and Gorsuch to join the court, spent a lot of money to campaign for them and to endorse them, and got the payoff when the Bruin decision came out. So there's no surprise. If you had to tell me there's as soon as I heard 7-2, I knew it was Alito and Thomas. Kavanaugh slid over with Gorsuch, even though Gorsuch has gone hard right. On issues like this, sometimes he swings back to center. Took Kavanaugh with him. Amy Coney Barrett, I'm not surprised, showed up in the majority. It's becoming the Amy Coney Barrett court, which we define as which justice is in the majority of more close decisions, the 5-4s, the 6-3s, and then you line them up. And I'm telling you, it's Amy Coney Barrett right now. She votes for it. She votes with the majority more than any other justice, period. And that's why and she's replacing Kennedy, who retired, as the swing vote. You got to aim for Amy Coney Barrett, no pun intended, if you want to win on an argument before the United States Supreme Court, just the way it is. I'll continue to follow it all right here on Legal AF. If you like this kind of content and reporting in real time, boom, hit the free subscribe button and help us continue to grow this channel. I got great news. We got some new contributors coming over starting on Monday. Dave Arenberg, you know him as the Florida law guy, or Florida law man, ding. He's coming over here full time to do his amazing analysis. You know, you loved him on Midas Touch. You loved him on True Crime and Court Authorities. Now he's over here full time with Legal AF, joining me, a dream come true, along with a number of his other contributors that you know from that other channel. So we're bringing that new vertical, if you will, over here. Court Accountability Action, Mike Sachs, Alex Aronson, Lisa Graves, they're here. Shan Wu, here. Mike Sachs is doing great work with Elie Mistal. He's coming over here to do some constitutional analysis and just wrote a new book. Dina Dahl, she's here with me and does Unprecedented. Look at this ecosystem we built together with our bare hands. I appreciate all of you. I'm Michael Popok, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.